Today on Lockdown Red Wings, we answer your questions.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Lockdown Red Wings podcast Friday edition. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a producer over at 97.1 The Ticket. Well, Scotty's also host over at Locked On Tigers as well as a freelance reporter for the Detroit News. And we decided a little bit of a slow news week. We've done a lot of a little mini series we wanted to do here in the offseason as already. And as we're still a little over a month away from free agency and the NHL draft, we decided to be a good question to throw it out to the people and see what kind of questions you guys had for us. And,
we haven't done one yet in the offseason. We haven't done a mailbag
haven't.
yet this offseason. So kind of made sense. And I'm sure the questions will get more, there will be more and more questions like that as we get closer and closer to draft and free agency and stuff. But we haven't done one yet. So just felt like the right time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of, I was surprised too, because we both man the Red Wings, Locked On Red Wings Twitter account. So I think we both kind of check it sporadically. So we don't always see all of the notifications as they happen because we're both checking them. So making them go away in a sense. And so as we were getting ready to record, I compiled them all and I was like, man, I didn't realize how many responses and questions that had been asked of us. So it's going to be a really good episode. But first, I want to thank you guys for making Lockdown Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Scotty, I think it's appropriate that we probably start with a question asked to us by fellow Lockdown podcast, Lockdown Senators at Send Central.
Great show they run over there. Great show.
One of the best in the Lockdown NHL network.
For sure.
They asked us, which Atlantic Division basement dweller wins a playoff series first? Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo, or Montreal? And I think it's from my own beliefs, I think it's pretty easy to just immediately eliminate Buffalo and Montreal from that equation. Yep. I think it's really between Detroit and Ottawa.
I agree with that. No, when they asked, I thought it was, I thought that it made sense that it came from them because I truly think that it's really only between those two. And we talked about this year during the regular season, as Boston started making up those games in hand that they had on us in January and February, right? And they started pulling away. We kind of realized that this division was completely just split in half, right? It really is just the four playoff teams that are really, really good, and then the four not playoff teams that are really not. And that's it. There's very little in between there. And yeah, I think, I don't know. It's interesting. I think, I'll take the bias. I'll take the win. But Ottawa certainly has a very bright young forward core, especially.
Well, and that's just precisely it. Not to say their defense is bad either. Their forward core is incredibly young. If you look at cap friendly, they have $24 million in cap space this offseason coming up, and not a single one of their forwards, with the exception of Austin Watson, only one of their forwards is 30 or older. That is an incredibly young core, and they have a lot of really good talent.
Talented, in the farm too. Their forwards, that's a really bright future of a forward core.
Their defensive core, they got a few guys who are 30, 31, 35. Other than that, they got guys like Jake Sanderson, who's 19 years old as well. I mean, so they're right with the Detroit Red Wings. They're probably their rebuild started in full swing a couple years older than the Detroit Red Wings did, a couple years earlier rather than the Detroit Red Wings did. But I up until this point, I'm not really convinced it's been going all that well. Because every year it feels like it's finally that year where they make the push for the playoffs. And again, hard division, but they're just not quite there. But because they started earlier, I think they have the edge on Detroit, if I'm being honest, on being competitive ready sooner. But I think general management and ownership also plays a huge role. And I think the Red Wings have the huge edge in terms of who's in their front office making the decisions. And the Red Wings can absolutely fast forward their rebuild with Steve Yzerman as a general manager. So that's why I think it's really, in all honesty, while I think Senators might have a little bit of an edge years-wise and experience-wise in this rebuild, the Red Wings are just as competitive just because of the intelligence they have in the front office.
Yeah, and it's also, it's win a playoff series, right? Not just make the postseason.
Let me double check here.
Because
win a playoff series first, yeah.
Right. So like, that's a little tougher too, because just making the postseason, I think it's not too hot of a take to then take Ottawa because of like that. They might be a step ahead of us, especially with again that forward core that they have going forward. But winning a playoff series is a totally different ball game. I mean, you can make the playoffs, 1, 2, 3 years in a row and not make it out of the first. I mean, look at Toronto.
Wow, that's a different beast right there.
Right, but for real, that's a totally different animal. So when you're talking about yeah, like I mean, I'll take the Wings, but it's definitely a conversation. It will be a fun thing to look at as both teams continue to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question here, kind of leading from that direction, comes from @HockeyCaptain13 on Twitter. Would you take the over or under on Berggren playing 50 games next year? Also, an ideal line mates. Who would we love to see him play with to maximize his potential? That is a really good question.
50, that's tough.
I believe that he was NHL ready at the end of the season. And the only reason Steve Yzerman talked about in his exit interview for the season that they made the decision to keep him down because they figured at that point in the season he didn't really have much to gain by playing a few games at the NHL level, especially with how bad the team was playing. I think I'm pretty confident he's going to make the Red Wings roster out of training camp. I think he's there. Where he'll play in the lineup is where it's going to get interesting. I think he plays over 50 games at the NHL level next year. That's what I believe. It's just his line mates that's going to be interesting.
I'll ride with you on that. I think some of it has to do with who they hit on in free agency too.
Absolutely. If they hit on anyone, depending on what their whole mindset is.
Right, for sure. But I do think that he will have every opportunity to hit that mark for sure. I agree with that. So yeah, I'll ride with you on that. I'll go with over.
Well, and thinking about line mates too, I would imagine they want to try and get him into a top 6 role. Like that's the goal, the ideal with Jonathan Berggren. But that's not a guarantee. He might start off. I don't know. It's tough because Lucas Raymond being an exception to the rule. He was a phenomenal talent. Started off playing top line minutes, but you might want to start him out on the lower line. Line 3, playing with a guy like Michael Rasmussen.
If I say Zadina, is that going to make people mad?
No, I mean Zadina played plenty of third line minutes this season.
No, for sure, but like I feel like there's such a negative connotation around Z now that like if he was to be paired with him, like it would almost be to the point where people would think, oh, he's going to negatively affect Berggren. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like there's almost that connotation around him now. But I would really like to see a line with that. I think that's two players that are trying to take big steps forward in their careers. And I think that would be a really, even if it's,
mutually
early
beneficial.
on, maybe not the most successful, you can always change it. But I think it would at least be an exciting line to watch from a fan's perspective.
Yeah, I think that's probably the ideal. It's going to be tough. You're going to want to also surround him with people who can protect him too as a young guy, a rookie, to get him into the league. So that's why maybe putting Giovanni or maybe Michael Rasmussen, who's big, who needs to use his body more. He's something that's the one thing that he was doing at the end of the season that helped to lead to so much of his success is he was starting to be more physical. And I think you bring a young guy like Jonathan Berggren in as a rookie, he's going to need to play with somebody who will fight for him. Lucas Raymond had Tyler Bertuzzi and Dylan Larkin. We all know Dylan Larkin's not afraid to scrap. I mean, we saw it in game 1.
Damn right. That's my captain, baby.
Want to thank you guys. Not thank you guys. Wrong read. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats.
Thank you guys. I think we might want to thank them too.
I thanked them at the start of the show, Scotty. Let's get out of here. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup. That's a weird. This year's NBA championship matchup. The NHL Hockey Conference Finals. Who do I got?
I'll take Golden State.
I want Celtics, but I have a feeling it's going to be Golden State.
Yeah, I got Golden State like pretty easily too.
I
might look like a fool, but I got like Warriors in 5 straight up.
You look like a fool for different reasons than that, but The NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball. Why? And all the latest fighting news in MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, I wanted to wait until the ad read was over before I ask this. Let me get that out of there. Why does it say this year's basketball championship matchup, but then name NHL, MLB, MMA, and UFC by like their acronyms and stuff? But they call it the basketball championship in the read.
Oh, man, I didn't write the read, unfortunately.
You should. You do a good job. You are a writer after all.
Some people think so. There it is.
All right, back to your guys' questions. Segment 2, Friday edition, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Let's see here. What else we got going on? Oh, this one's a good one from @Lincoln J. Will. What is your guys' favorite Red Wings moment ever?
Wow, that's a question,
loaded one. Yeah.
So I don't know if I can pinpoint one specific, just like rules all above moment like that. Off the top of my head, one of the first ones I thought of when you finished the question was the last game at the Joe is certainly up there
really
for
good
me.
one. Riley Sheahan doesn't score a goal in 81 games. Game 82 scores 2, including the last one ever.
Yep, incredible. So like that's definitely up there for me. I remember I was in my dorm room my freshman year at college watching that, and I was calling my buddy, and I were just like on the phone watching the game together from like our colleges, and just were like emotional wrecks watching this game and freaking out with the highs and lows and everything. So that one's definitely up there. I mean, being a kid, being in I think I was in 4th or 5th grade, and watching the Wings win the cup. I mean, that's like easy, but it's also like
Exactly.
quite literally the most recent championship we have in the entire city. So like I'm gonna use it.
That's my like. I could easily say the 2008 Stanley Cup championship because that's the one I remember the most vividly. If I'm trying to think of like moments that are special to me, I was able to attend the season opener where against the Toronto Maple Leafs, where Dylan Larkin scored his first career goal.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
That's a really big one for me. That's
For
probably
sure.
one of my favorite moments. I think was that the same game Justin Applicator had a hat trick as well? I think it might have been. I think it might have been like a 4-0 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs.
We have a lot of people that will pop off on opening night.
Yeah, I mean
that's like
Bertuzzi did this
we
last
had the
season.
Mantha thing, Bertuzzi. Like that's like a really common occurrence for us for some reason.
Stir hot. Man,
Bobby Ryan had a couple, I think, in that first game that year. Like that's
There are a lot of really good moments. It's hard to really pinpoint, but I guess if it comes to like the moment that means the most to me, it's just because I experienced Dylan Larkin's first
for
goal in
sure.
person.
I mean, honestly, for like our generation, I mean, Datsuk alone has like 3 or 4
many
that I will never forget. Right? I mean, the goal against Boston in the playoffs, like that will always be in there. The shootout goal against what was that, Chicago? Like there's I mean, he alone has so many for our generation that there's a couple of Pavel moments there. But if I was forced to pick one, honestly, I'd probably pick the last game of the Joe, just because
that's a good
like
one.
I said, like going through that with my buddy over the phone and doing, just all the emotion in that game and bringing everybody out and stuff. It was definitely a big one.
The next one here is going to be from @James A. Hutch, a regular on Twitter who's pretty interactive with our stuff pretty consistently.
For sure.
He asks, do you want the team to go aggressive in free agency this summer or wait a year and then get aggressive? This James.
That's the question.
That's the question.
Highly debated, very highly debated within the
in my own
base.
head.
James
it's been highly debated.
Right. James is also great. Shout out James, man. He interacts with all the Red Wings stuff. He interacts with the Tigers stuff that I do too. He's a real one. It's tough, man. I think I don't think that you necessarily have to like fully do either if you don't want to. I think that you can bring in like a big name free agent this offseason and s- like if you struggle this upcoming season, even after bringing in a big name, then you still struggle for one more year. And then next year you take the big step forward, or you bring somebody in, you see how everybody plays, and maybe you take the big step forward this year. I don't think you necessarily need to go into the offseason. Like we either need to be all in and just go after everybody, or we need to just do absolutely nothing
Exactly.
and be like we talked about. I don't remember when,
Yeah.
but we talked about that one show, like the Pudge analogy. Like you can do something like that. Like you can bring somebody in and right, go Tigers. You can bring somebody in and that's built for the future and is part of this core for a long time without quote unquote ruining a rebuild if you still want another year of kind of a high pick.
Right. It's like a ramp up in aggressiveness.
For sure. For
It's
sure.
not like you decide 1 year, okay, now it's time to spend all our cap.
Correct.
Because that's how you have a window of like 1 to 2 years. It's a consistent moving machine of bringing in talent that you think can help you succeed. And I guess for the purpose of answering James's question, the dumb monkey brain inside me wants this to be the year we get aggressive because I'm so tired of watching the team
For
lose.
sure. No, I
So like
100% agree with that.
I absolutely wanted them to bring in a free agent, even if it's just one. So, like, I would consider this an aggressive free agency. If you bring in one free agent that is capable of moving the needle, so far, these last few free agencies, they haven't brought in any players in free agency that has moved the needle of the rebuild in the direction towards success.
Right.
It's been a bunch of band-aid players. I mean, let's even guys like Bobby Ryan and Vladislav Nemesnikov, who had good seasons with the Detroit Red Wings. Bobby Ryan last season and this past most recent year, Nemesnikov had a great year before he got dealt. They didn't move the needle on the rebuild. They were always just stand-ins. So I would want them to be aggressive from the standpoint is like this offseason with $35 million in cap space. I want them to bring in at least one guy who moves the needle on this rebuild. That's what I want. They don't have to spend all $35 million now, and it doesn't have to be Johnny Gaudreau. I would love Johnny Gaudreau. Don't get me wrong.
We all would.
We all would love him. But like there's plenty of other guys, and we talked a little bit about it in yesterday's episode about these playoff contending teams and all their UFAs, about all those players who could be, guys who move the needle. Just signing one guy, one of those guys would at least prove to me that the Red Wings are trying to take another step towards competitiveness. And I would consider that, I guess by my personal definition, an aggressive free agency.
Yo, I 100% agree. And that's the thing is you can, that was my point. Like you can
Yeah, I mean,
hover over that line and still
it goes back to that analogy with the Tigers that you
right.
hinted at with the whole Pudge and Ordonez thing. Those were signings they made in the offseason that weren't necessarily for that season, but for the years coming soon, And that's what I'm looking for out of the almost said the Tigers. The Red Wings this season. The Tigers are hot right now, so
exactly.
they're on my head.
Damn right.
This one comes from Red Wings Got Next on Twitter. Another one who's always
Yes.
interacting with our Twitter posts. Is there any worry that the Red Wings don't have enough top 6 potential forwards, prospects, young guys in the pool? There's really no forwards that get talked about being really good other than Raymond and possibly Berggren. First of all, Elmer Soderblom. But no, I mean, that is something that I've thought about a lot too. Is there's a lot of forwards in the prospect pool. That was the word. The word prospect completely left my mind there. I had to remember it. But there's a lot of forwards in the prospect pool that look like they could maybe one day be an NHL forward, but not like a bona fide. This is a top 6 forward. Like this is the reason why I want the Red Wings, if possible. Again, you always take the best player available, and if it's a defenseman like Jiricek or Nemec, you take a defenseman at 8. But if it's possible, I want them to take a forward, because outside of Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Raymond, and Fabry is like he's here for 3 more years, but I wouldn't consider him like a long-term solution. There's no long-term forwards that are like
long-term top 6. Sure.
Long-term top 6
I could see
forwards.
Fabry being a third liner for this team for a decade.
I love Fabry. This is not Fabry slander at all.
Right. No, like he's still young enough. Right. No, you're absolutely right. In a top 6 for a competitive playoff caliber team, Robbie Fabry should not be your long-term solution at right
Exactly.
away, for sure.
Which is why I mean, yeah, I am a little bit concerned about the prospects of top 6 forwards of guys who are on the way. Outside of Berggren and Elmer Soderblom, it seems like we don't hear a whole lot out of these other forwards. You guys have other guys that they just drafted this year who
No, but
showed potential, but they're not close.
even with that all being said, even with the guys that you did name off, I'm not sure anybody in like scouting circles or maybe even within this fan base views any of those dudes as like a top line playoff team caliber talent, top 6 playoff, caliber talent player. Like I hope they're going to be great, and Berggren I think does have top 6 potential, but when it comes down to like not all your prospects are going to hit, not all those guys are going to hit, and I'm not sure any of them have like top line ceiling as is anyway. So I mean it's definitely, I don't know if I'd call it a concern because there's a draft every year. We have a lot of picks in said drafts for the foreseeable future, and we have a ton of cap space. So like it's I'm not sure I'm like terrified at the thought of oh my goodness, we don't have anybody in the wings that is going to be top line forward talent, but it's definitely something to consider and kind of remember. I'm very excited about the future of this team. And we definitely have a lot of defensive help coming, and we have like we said, some offensive help
Well,
coming
like
as well. But when it comes to that top end talent, that's definitely something that we're gonna have to keep an eye on and time it correctly when it comes down to when to make additions via whatever trade, free agency, draft, etc.
exactly. And I mean, this is also I do need to shout out the guys from like this past draft class had a fantastic year.
Correct.
Cross
Absolutely.
Hannes when the WHL had 86 points in 63 games played, and Carter Mazur had 38 points in 41 games, all on the way to a national championship with the University of Denver. But it's so early, like it's D+1 for these guys, so it's so
Right.
too early to tell yet how good they're going to grow as you know uh, Detroit Red Wings, Detroit Red Wings prospects. So that's why, like, I didn't necessarily name them immediately, but I did not forget them. Liam Dower Nilsson's another guy who had a pretty solid season over in the SHL J20 league. But like, there's a lot of guys that are just too early to tell, and of the guys that it's not too early to tell, outside of like Jonathan Berggren and maybe Elmer Soderblom, it's not looking great in terms of those top 6 prospectives, which takes me back to my original point as to why I want the Red Wings to, if possible, take another forward at number 8. Let's see, where did it? Oh yeah, it's on a. Got to tab over to it. It's not on a. There we go. Okay. Sorry, awkward pause here as I navigate.
Ryan
through.
Fisher, he's a host.
Thank you for always covering me up. This one comes actually from Instagram. Jason Mold 418. This one's a really interesting one, Scotty, and it's going to make you think. If you could take a backup goalie, a bottom pair defenseman, and a bottom 6 forward from any Red Wings roster between 1997 and 2012 and add them to next year's roster, who do you pick? So not like, and I love this question because it's like eliminating all the easy answers. And this
Maybe not for goalie, but yeah.
maybe not for goalie, but it's
I'll
taking out
take
a lot of the
year old
easy.
Hasek.
Yeah, no.
or Prime Ozzy. I don't care. Whatever
Yeah.
one you consider the
Or
backup, I'll take
Mike
that
Vernon,
one.
whoever was the backup at the time.
Right. Yeah. Whatever day you pick, whoever was the backup that day, that's who I'll take.
Well, it's like you'd have to really look at these Red Wings rosters from like, and Jason, this is one of those ones where it's like, do I even remember who bottom 6 forwards were or bottom pair defensemen were on those teams?
That's like my favorite game to play. Like me and my friends will literally just sit around and just for fun, we'll just list random athletes that people forgot about. Like that's like one of my favorite things to do on the planet. So this is a very, very fun question for me. The goalie one's definitely that. We're doing 1 forward, 1 defenseman, 1 goalie.
Yes.
For forward, Man, like the interesting thing is too, there was so many like good depth forwards in the 2000s that I mean that's a laundry list of talent that you have there. And again, like, can I cheat? I'll take 2002. I'll take fourth line Pavel Datsyuk. There you go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to be my answer because that's definitely cheating. But like, it's just some of those teams were so deep that like you can totally just play that game.
Well, like I'm just gonna pick a season. I'm on Hockey Reference right now, guys. I'm just gonna pick a random season, and let's see if there's anyone who. Here we go. Seasons
Just
who
pick,
like
yeah, just
stands
pick like
out.
some random year, like 05 or 06. Like,
Let's
don't pick
go.
like
Let's
an
go.
obvious year.
07, 08, the year
All right.
they won the cup. Let's see who a bottom pair defensemen were on this team, and a bottom pair forward. I'm just gonna pick one of those guys. How about Oh my god! And like the 08's interesting because you still had the grind line. Like the grind line was still around
Right.
that year. It was like I think it was
Barely,
their
but yeah.
final year because like they signed Darren McCarty that offseason. And like there was one shift where Mike Babcock let them play. Oh, this is a tough one. There's a lot of interesting guys on this list. I'm gonna take. I can't take Yuri Hudler because he wasn't a bottom six forward, was he? He had
Well, that's
42
like
points in
again
81
where
games.
like bottom six gets a little shaky too because like those lines certainly maybe not as much in the Babcock days, but
I'm gonna
pre
take Yuri
Babcock
Hudler.
especially like there was a lot of line movement and stuff. You know what I mean?
I'm going to take Yuri Hudler for the purpose of this because I'm looking at this roster, and there's no way Yuri Hudler played a lot of meaningful second line minutes with you had guys like Valtteri Filppula, Michael Samuelsson, and Johan Franzen also on the team playing really well, right? That or I'll take Valtteri Filppula. I can't necessarily remember which one of those guys played bottom 6 minutes with the Red Wings. And then defensively, do I... man, this is such a tough one. I like this question a lot. It really
this is
makes
the
you
other thing.
think.
Like I mean, I'll take 47-year-old Chris Chelios. How about that?
What that's I'll take Andreas Lilia. I don't know.
Nice.
Brett Lebda. I honestly don't know. This is such a tough one.
That's a
You
really
have
fun question though. Like I don't know.
that
Like
one.
that's one that we could talk about for a whole half hour and just
Yeah,
like
and that's
literally
just
just
from 1 year. That's from 07, 08. I mean, granted, that's one of their best years. They won the cup that year, but man, Jason, you've stumped us. You've done it. You've stumped us
it's a
on
fun
who to
question
take.
though. That's one that you can think about like all the time. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like
absolutely.
that's a really really fun one.
So our last question here comes from somebody near and dear to my heart. He managed to DM us quite literally as we hopped on to about to record, and this comes from beer league teammate of mine at Avers_Matthew, and he asks, which of Brian's beer league teammates is his favorite? Matt, it's you, buddy.
See, you should have said not Matt. You should have picked somebody else.
I
Just so
can't do that to
can
Matt.
be
If you
Matt.
knew Matt, you would understand. Like, it's not possible. Genuinely, like
you knew Matt. Fair enough.
he like the best person alive. Like probably gonna be made a saint once he passes away in 2 years. No, I'm just kidding. Just end his life abruptly. No, but he's great. I love Matt. So not to get sappy, but all timer, that guy.
All timer. There you go. There's your answer.
Scotty, you want to give us a lemon tree update? I think Isa Rohan wants one.
Oh yeah. It's so exciting. It's officially outside again. So it's summer.
You know.
That's how my family determines whether what season it is. If the lemon tree's outside, it's summertime, baby. So yeah, it's officially outside. We just got a lemon off of it. I think the most recent one was probably a couple of weeks ago now. But then this summer it should crank out a few more. And yeah, be on the uptick. So officially outside is the lemon tree update.
Isa Rohan also wants to know how big your clock is.
I don't have a clock even in this room. It's like Vegas back here.
So your clock is non-existent.
Apparently, man. I don't even have one back here. I could have sworn we used to have a clock right there, but I guess not.
He also asked how big my deck was. I don't have a deck. We have a balcony, so it's about a balcony size.
There you go. Well, there you go. There's your answers.
Yeah, great mailbag
Balcony
questions by
sized and non-existent.
the venerable Iser Rohan. So.
Yes, the infamous.
Oh, and Jared Ellis, the host of Lockdown Hurricanes, Carolina Hurricanes, obviously, did ask us if Ned was safe and if he was doing okay.
He is doing very, very well.
Very.
We are taking great care of him. He's part of the culture now. We love Ned.
We absolutely do. Any final thoughts, Scotty?
We ball.
We absolutely ball. That is like the epitome, the pinnacle of final thoughts right there.
It is.
We'll be back with you guys on Monday. Almost said tomorrow. Forgot it was Friday. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.